As I was researching for Always in Season, I found that there were dozens of cases of Black people found hanging publicly since 2000, since 1995. Actually, I started looking at the case of Antoine Sedgwick, who was found hanging in Hampton, Virginia, hours after the O.J. Simpson verdict. And that case was ruled a suicide. And so there have been dozens of deaths, and there unfortunately, sadly, are not exact numbers. There's a CDC report that I've been looking at that says that there have been 79 unsolved hangings of Blacks, and that they've all been males in this report. 79 hangings that are unsolved between 2000 and 2016. And so you have all of these cases in the midst of violence we know that's not being acknowledged. If it weren't for the outcry, the public outcry around Ahmaud Arbery's murder, for example, then the McDaniels, Travis and Gregory McDaniel, and the accomplice would not have been held accountable. And so there is a justified outcry, even when the result is a suicide. There's a justified outcry that comes out of the Black community, but by anyone who's paying attention and concerned, that these might be lynchings.
I wanted to ask you about the case of T.T. Gully, a Black transgender woman experiencing homelessness who was found hanging in Portland, Oregon. It got a lot of attention recently, and in fact, it got so much attention that a lot of people, including us, thought it had just happened in May of this year, but it was actually a year ago. The local medical examiner ruled her death to be a suicide, but her family believes she may have been killed. Now it's getting renewed attention as a result of the hangings in California, Texas, and New York have gained national attention. So as you point out, it is not only Black men in these cases. And talk about the significance of the renewed interest in finding out what happened, investigating T.T. Gully's death.
Yeah, I think it's important to look at. I also thought that the death happened on May 27th of this year, but in fact, it was May 27th, 2019. And part of that reason is because the story was dropped by the press in 2019 and then picked up with these more recent hanging deaths. And so this kind of invisibility that goes with these hanging cases in general is even greater with trans women, trans people like T.T. Gully, for whom the family still believes that she didn't commit suicide. And the last news reports I saw on the case were from 2019 until very recently. And so that's just an example of how when we look at these cases individually, we're not giving the issues the attention that's merited, the issue about collectively what's going on beyond just dropping in on one case and then out when the police decide that they've figured out or that they've investigated enough. It's important for journalists in particular to look at all of it comprehensively and in the context of historic lynching terrorism. And so just as with historic lynchings, certainly Black men were the primary victims of lynching, but women and children were also the victims of lynching.
And can you talk about how these hangings are often after some kind of horrific event, like the police killing of Michael Brown in 2014. Lennon Lacey, the case you looked at Always in Season, that happened right after that. And then, of course, you have the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, the police uprising, and then these subsequent hangings.
And they also come after touchstones that are racialized. And so there was an upsurge in noose incidents, threats by noose, when President Obama campaigned for the very first time. Between 2005 and 2008, there was an upsurge that was reported by the Southern Poverty Law Center. And so there are these points in which there is some momentum by the Black community, a bit of progress that's met with backlash. And there's also these points in which there's this signaling from leadership that violence is okay. And so you have out of this, all of this violence that we see, and particularly Black people and brown people are really tuned into in ways that the mainstream doesn't necessarily acknowledge. We see it, we understand that there are connections between what happens when police shoot Oscar Brown in the back, when they murder George Floyd on video, and these hangings, and that there could possibly be a connection. And so the outcry, even when there's a suicide, is out of this sense of urgency that all of these things, including the noose incidents and all of these ways that Black lives are threatened and minimized, they could very easily result in lynching.
You also have the case in 2018 of the son of a prominent Ferguson activist, Melissa McKinney's. Her son found hanging behind the family home in Ferguson. He was 24 years old. She says he was lynched. So in all these cases, what are you demanding happens now, Jacqueline?
I think that they deserve a full investigation, and that and given the context of this history, and given what people in communities understand about the racial divisions in these communities, and the families concerned, that we look at them more than 3 days, that they are, and then that they are looked at as a whole, because whether or not these are lynchings or whether or not they're suicides, the questions around, is there this new trend for Black people to hang themselves publicly? There's been historically the stigma for Black people about hanging, and certainly hanging publicly and hanging from trees. But if these are suicides, then that's information that's really important to understand. In addition to understanding what are the issues around structural racism that can increase depression and increase anxiety and the suicide rate for Black people, those are all really important to understand. So you have, for example, Malcolm Harsh, who was found hanging, and even though the investigation hasn't concluded yet because of toxicology reports, you have him found hanging at a homeless encampment. And so there are issues about housing instability and insecurity for Black people in particular that are important to look at.